Hey guys, welcome to Righteous Gaming. This is Hunter, and I'm here with Zach. I recently got ninth at Canadian Nationals playing Fang, and Zach has been working on a Fang video for a long time, so we decided to team up on this and do a little deck tech plus analysis. Zach, what do you have to say?
Well, I'm excited. I've been trying to talk about Fang for a while, and it's just kept getting put on the back burner for other things. But yeah, no, like I said, you got ninth at Canadian Nats. I got what 54th or something like that, top 64 at US Nats. So both of us coming off decent results on the deck, I would say. And I'm excited to talk about it because I think that Fang is a lot deeper than people give him credit for.
Yeah, I agree. I think the deck building, there's a lot of small intricacies that going into playing him, but building the deck is a nightmare, and it's been a nightmare for both of us for the past 2, 3 months. I think we've been on the deck. Um, so, is there anything you wanted to talk about before we get into the cards themselves?
I think that we can start with the cards because at the end, I think the plan is we're gonna go through your stream game and VOD review, talk about play lines there. So I think it's a little bit easier to talk about the game plan when we're physically doing it. So I think we can just get into the cards. I think that's fine.
Okay, so getting into the cards, let's start with equipment. It's pretty simple. Warrior has Brave Forge bracers. This is the only arms that really works with daggers. It blocks three. It lets you use extra resources. It's it's really simple. You don't really have any other choices here. Grains of Blood Spill. Fangs could play one of two chests. Either they can play Grains or they can play Flamescale Furnace. Grains, assuming you're playing cards that are not red, Grains will net you a lot more value throughout the game just by being able to make Vigor, carry it over, either use that Vigor on Brave Forge Bracers later or use it on cards like Perforate, which we'll get to a bit later. Um, but it helps, and it helps carry over resources in the early game from a blue or something like that so that you can play your next turn without pitching an extra card.
Yeah, and I guess just to touch on the third option because I'm sure people will say you can play Tunic in this deck as well. Um, Grains to me, the more I play, just feels like Tunic that's up more in a lot of ways. It doesn't feel that hard to hit as Fang. It blocks too. It's better in that capacity. I know we tried Tunic for a while into things like Jarl, where just having the guaranteed value when you're never intending to block anyway is maybe marginally better, but Grains just fills the same niche, just a little bit better in my opinion at least.
Yeah, Tunic. I think if you get to like a really fatigue heavy meta, um, like for example into Stack Florian, we were playing Tunic, and it feels good into Stack Florian. It feels good into Slab Dash. These matchups where, like Zach said, not really planning on blocking ever. So the value there doesn't matter, and you're not gonna hit a lot because they're playing 30D reacts. Just having the Tunic to guaranteed get off your cards that cost one resource, or to just play a turn without pitching a card earlier is good. Meta's not like that right now though, so no Tunic in this list. We have Kabuto. A lot of people, myself included, sort of memed on this card when it came out for being just warrior hate, but this card's sort of cracked.
There's
Um,
so many matchups that it's just pseudo carry and husk in a lot of ways. It's
yeah,
just
yeah, there really
big
are.
big number good, big number just good as it turns out.
There are a lot of matchups where either this card will block for 6 damage, maybe sometimes more. Like Syndra is an example of a matchup where this card can very easily block like 14, and that's not even other warriors. Um, Additionally, it's just incredible for getting tempo in specific matchups. Just being able to prevent your opponent from attacking with their weapon at the end of the turn, even if it doesn't cost them something, even if they were like gonna tunic into a one cost weapon. It just it might let you keep a card when you weren't going to be able to, or it might just mess up their sequencing a little bit, and it can be very relevant. Two Obsidian Firevein, not much to say here. It's Fang's weapon. If you're not familiar with Fang's weapon, uh, it's just a one cost dagger that gets +1 and go again if you've played a Draconic card while it's on the chain link. So your whole deck is built around enabling this. And with that in mind, I guess I should touch on Fang just in case people aren't familiar. Fang, his text reads, whenever you hit a marked hero, you'll generate a fealty token. So marking a hero is fairly similar to just generating a fealty, just delayed. And when you control 3 fealty, your daggers cost 1 less to use, which in this case means your daggers are free. It means you can play functionally pitchless from the moment you get 3 fealty on until the end of the game, and that generally amounts to drawing an extra card in quotations every turn. So, hugely, ridiculously powerful hero effect. Really difficult to enable, requires you to play a lot of weird cards, but gets you there. And then Dynamo. You'd think Dynamo was the best equipment in this deck, but like honestly, Grains and Kabuto are so insane that like they can compete with Dynamo for how good they are in their matchups, especially Kabuto. Um, yeah, Dynamo's just lock one every turn of the game pretty much. Very, very rarely do you not reset your Dynamo counters, and it's insane. The longer the game goes, the more likely you are to win, not just because of Dynamo, but because of how Fang works and his text. And that generally positions you, and at least from the equipment side, as a deck that's better into slower metas, but we'll talk a little bit more about your faster matchups.
Yeah,
And it,
for sure. And I think that like if people are looking for a reason to play Fang or like Warrior in general over other like aggressive type of decks, I think equipment is like my go-to answer. Because like all of your equipment, like you said, is just so high value. Like people will compare it to things like Grasp that Runeblade gets, because people always complain about the Runeblade fridge. But like if there's a class that can contend with like how good Runeblade's equipment is, it is Warrior.
yeah, Warrior Guardian, now Runeblade somehow definitely have
Yeah,
the biggest fridges in Fab, and while Runeblade gets more utility off of their equipment generally, in the sense of like Face Purgatory is a really insane card if you ever attack tall, and you get an insane amount of block out of Earth Chest, which is apparently now just Runeblade Chest. And they get an AB2 chest, which I'm sure we'll talk about Warrior and their wizard issues in a minute. But Warrior just gets great chests that like Grains enables so much of what dual-handed Warrior wants to do. Dynamo getting the free breakpoint every single turn of the game. Like I play so much two-handed Warrior now that my entire card evaluation is skewed because I'm like, oh, it's a breakpoint. It doesn't matter. I just Dynamo it. Attack for one? Ira? Whatever. Like, everything's messed up for my card evaluation, having played Dynamos for so long now. And I'm going to go down to the sideboard quickly and talk about the other equipment in here. In the head slot, Kabuto may be insane, but it's not insane in every matchup. And sometimes you just want, or sometimes need, balance of justice. The big matchups for balance, I would say, are the Pirate Heroes right now, though I don't actually know if you play it into Puffin. So mostly Gravy, Marlin, Prism is a huge one, and Jarl because it doesn't break when you block with it.
yeah, for sure. And I guess to touch on like other options, because I know a lot of people were like kind of floored that we didn't have like Crown of Providence as like an option. And I think that like the hand fixing for Fang is like really good, but a lot of the times like Crown of Providence just goes in similar matchups that Kabuto would go into, and you can get like similar value there. Or sometimes Balance of Justice can go in there as well, like into Jarl, for example. You don't actually want the cop effect more than you want to have a headpiece. So it's like I think that Balance of Justice has the most EV into like matchups that you're struggling into, and Kabuto is fine into everything else basically.
Generally, yeah. If you were in a meta with a lot of like Guardian, Assassin, Ranger, then you can play Providence, and it's good. Generally speaking, I would consider Providence a luxury choice, though. Like, if you have an extra
Yeah, for
sideboard
sure.
slot that you don't want for something else, then it's a good card to put in, and it will help you into Arachnes and mostly Arachnes. It's marginally better into Rangers because you don't get value out of either of the other hats, so you may as well fix your hand. Stuff like that. Um, I would not, assuming you own a balance, I would not leave home without one in Fang. It is so incredibly important for winning your Prism matchup, your Gravy matchup, and your Jarl matchup. And it's also, I prefer it into Brutes. I know a lot of people say Kabuto into Brute is good because it means they can't double claw. Uh, I like balance. I would consider Kabuto into Leviah, but into Rhinar, I like having balance because I like being able to draw a card after they intimidate me so that I don't die. And into KO, they only have one claw, and if they see you have Kabuto, they're always going to lead with it. So
Yeah.
Kabuto is only block 5 in that matchup, still good, but balance is also block 5 in that matchup, but it's a lot more versatile.
Yeah, so assuming you don't top deck one of the like stinky no blocks that we have quite a few of, but I'm sure we'll
Well,
get to that
if you
later.
top deck a stinky no block, you were going to draw it next turn anyways. So,
Yeah, for sure.
and then we have Null Rune Hood, Null Rune Hood, and a Draconic hero. AB, why? Um, there's a lot to go into with AB and Blues and Pitch and Fang that I'm going to get over into a little bit more when we go over cards and matchups, I think. But for now, head slot is your worst slot into AB matchups, being like Vincent, Verdance, and sometimes Florian. I'm on the fence. It depends on the build of Fang, whether or not I run AB into Florian. Um, and then Spellfray legs. I decided to go for Poppers instead of 3 Spell Void, just hedging a little more for Prism and a lot less for Kano. If you expect to see Kanos, then by all means put 3 Spell Void, 1 AB, or 4 Spell Void in the list. It's fine. Um, all right, that's equipment. I just want to, Zach, do you have anything to say before we touch on the main board?
I mean, on equipment specifically, no. I think I said everything I need to say there. We already talked about like all the other ones that we tested. I think.
Yeah, so I guess there's Dragon Scaler.
Oh, sure. I guess we should like touch on this because like I think that that goes into like a bigger discussion on like the idea behind the deck a little bit. Because like a lot of people will play Dragon Scalar Flight Path in decks that are like more attack heavy, that play like Blaze Headlong and all these other things. Like I know Mara Ferris is big on this. But like the main issue with Dragon Scalar, to me at least, is that it's hard to get more value out of Dragon Scalars than it is to get out of Dynamos for one thing in a lot of matchups. And even in the matchups that you can get more value out of Dragon Scalars, it feels very luxury. Like you're probably already winning anyway. So just like ending the game a turn sooner doesn't actually feel that good. Because like the idea is that it's kind of like a Warrior Stormstriders in like a very roundabout way, where you just like negate a block on a dagger. Like if they block 6 on your second dagger swing, presenting like presumed lethal from hand, you can Dragon Scalar the dagger, attack with the dagger again, and then they just die.
Yeah.
But like that's just not really what Fang needs, in my opinion. At least in a lot of matchups, it's really good in like the fatigue sort of metagames where you just need an additional swing. Like into Stack Florian, we were playing it. Slapdash, same kind of vibe as Tunic, but like it just doesn't feel like you need that in the meta right now, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think same vibe as Tunic makes sense. Like, Scalar for me is for matchups that are like 3 turns long, or for matchups that are 50 turns long and they don't attack you.
Yeah, that's
Um,
probably a good way of thinking about it.
so again, Slapdash, Teklovasin, Stack Florian were all great Scalar matchups, but CYB and Germinate and Scepter got banned. Don't need it for those anymore because those are much. I mean, Tekla was never really relevant. I think a lot of people would argue Slapdash was never really relevant, but I have local Slapdash and Tekla players, so I think they were very good. Scalar was very good in those matchups, and I think if you did not have Spell Void on legs, this is good into Kano, and I think it is viable into something like Acilio. Otherwise, like I don't see it coming back for me very soon, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think the meta would have to take like a very strange turn for it to come back anytime soon. That or like the Verdance matchup would have to get like very weird.
Yeah.
I could see it maybe coming back for that. But
Yeah, if Verdance just stops playing attacks into you, it's good, but that's
yeah.
unlikely to happen.
Yeah, it seems most people are like committed to like the Icelandery mid range, which I think is just like strictly better into the field anyway. So
Yeah. Okay, on to the main board. I'm going to go over a lot of cards very quickly. We're going to have a link to the deck list below, obviously. So if you want to read what a card does more specifically, uh, go there and check it out. A lot of these cards say Draconic. They say +2, which plus the dagger +1 means 0 for 3 react, give go again, and some conditional text. Most of the time, that conditional text is make a fealty, either mark or literal fealty. Starting off at the beginning, we have Affirm Loyalty, +2, second link, make a fealty. I'll touch on Blade Flurry here. Some people aren't playing Blade Flurry. I think it can depend on your list. Zach brought up Mara a lot. Mara's, I think, the most prominent Fang representative, at least in the West, in North America. I'm not familiar with people in Europe or Asia for this. She doesn't really like Blade Flurry, but she also takes the approach of a lot more attacks than we do. And because of that, her goal is not to attack with 2 daggers a turn normally, so Blade Flurry is much less relevant there. I like Blade Flurry, especially in this list where you're constantly attacking. At worst, it blocks 3. It is a crappy card before you're online most of the time, but you can't go wrong with a card that's blocks 3 minimum and oftentimes is a late game 0 for 5, because you break a fealty, then play this and gives the additional +1 and then +2 the next attack.
yeah, and it's like even early game though, like a lot of Fangs are like really scared to go down on fealty, and there are some games where it's wrong too, obviously. But like, there's a decent amount of time where you're sitting at 2 fealty, you draw this, and like you just pop a fealty, go to 1, and then you turn on the effect for like a second react on your second swing. And you're totally fine. You just played a 0 for 5.
Yeah,
Like the card just makes your deck like a little bit faster. It makes your breakpoints a little bit more awkward, and a lot of times it can just lead to you like hitting and replacing the fealty anyway. So it's like it can be crappy early, but like depending on the situation, it's totally fine early as well.
like
Like it's like a little inconsistent, but not too bad in my opinion at least.
imagine a context where like you have a yellow or a blue in hand, a Blade Flurry and an Affirm Loyalty, and 2 fealty, and your opponent is marked. You just go into that, you pitch, you swing the dagger, you pop the first fealty for Blade Flurry, so that you have go again, so that you can play the Affirm Loyalty on the second chain link and get that fealty back for free. And then if you
Yeah,
have
and
hit them at any point that turn, you're online, for example. Stuff like
yeah,
that's pretty common
for
with
sure.
the non-draconic reacts, mostly like Scar Tissue Blade Flurry, but there's another one down here that we might talk about a little bit. Uh, Blistering Blade, +2 Draconic React, +3 if it's the second chain link. Everything that I say that's Draconic and isn't an M blocks 2 or 0. which is part of what makes Fang a pain. I am going to come back around to Drop of Dragon Blood and Fire and Brimstone and these attacks later because I just want to cover all of the Draconic stuff first. Imperial Intent is
The one with no text.
one with no text unless you're into Jarl. If this is the second or more chain link, you can circumvent Frostbites because it'll go to negative cost. Relevant, but not very relevant, but cute. Otherwise, since you always have a Draconic chain link in this deck, unless you're erase faced. Does erase face affect dagger? I don't even know.
So like erase face makes it so that like you aren't Draconic at base, but you can still gain, so you can still like fealty pop to make daggers work, but you can't like
But like, would the
play
dagger be a Draconic chain link under erase face?
If you use fealty, yes, but if you don't, no.
You can't use fealty to buff a dagger, can you? Well, either not
Well,
important.
no. I mean, if you're
Not
playing
important.
the Imperial,
It is.
intent, you
It
would have to
always
make
costs
the Imperial
0.
Draconic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It always costs 0. Sometimes it costs -1, +3, 2 block, Draconic. Gives go again. Long Whisker Loyalty, great. There's no I don't draw Long Whisker during the video, but there's a lot of play lines that you can do with this that are obtuse. Most commonly will be your opponent blocks 4 on your first chain link, and you just play Long Whisker Loyalty, give your second dagger on hit mark, because it does not have to be the dagger you're attacking with. Same thing with the additional attack. So you just give that dagger mark, sidestep their attack, and then come in next attack with like a Pledge Fealty or something and on hit mark.
Yeah, it's like a build your own Searing Gaze most of the time. Like a lot of people I see play this card and they're like, I want to get max value out of it. They want to play it on like the second link always, and like there are times where that's correct, and once you're online, it's almost always correct.
Yeah.
But before you're online, this is like one of your best ways to actually generate fealty and generate marks is to just like circumvent blocks, like you're saying.
Yep. And yeah, blocks 3, cracked.
Yeah.
Pledge Fealty, 0 cost. Make a fealty. Since you can play it during the chain link, it gives +1 and go again. It's a terrible card, except it's the best card in your deck. It's really... Fang is a deck of 2 game states. The game state where you like drawing Pledge Fealty, and the game state where you're like, why am I playing a card that blocks 0 and gives me at best 1 value?
Dude, there's been so much cope that I mean, I don't know if you've also gone through it, but that I've gone through with this card where I'm like, maybe I don't need it, and then you try and like cut down to 2 or 1, and then you're like, no, I definitely need it, and you go back to 3, and then you try and mitigate like the downside of drawing it later. And there was a point in time where I was playing like 6 Sink Belows in my deck, so I could just filter out late game Pledge Fealties. But at the end of the day, like this card is just your engine. Like,
yeah.
You just need guaranteed fealty, guaranteed marks, which we'll get to later with, the blue base. And just having the consistency, especially into more defensive decks, just goes a really long way. It also, gives you just this, disgusting high roll potential if you, draw at turn 0, especially going second. You just, start the game with tempo and, a fealty.
Yeah.
It's just, way too good.
Touch on Savor as well. Just finish up the Draconic cards. Searing Gaze, second chain link on hit mark, otherwise 0 mana +3, 2 block Draconic. And Tooth of the Dragon. We trade out having 2 block, which is stinky, for 0 block, which is only marginally more stinky.
It's about the same, honestly.
Yeah, normally it's about the same so long as your whole hand isn't 0 blocks. For a effective +4 and very, very frustrating card for your opponent to deal with. There's a lot of times where your opponent will block 4 on your first attack so that you don't get a mark, because all of your things will pump your dagger to 4, and then you just play this, you waste 2 of their block, your next attack is +3. Even works on attack actions. Yeah, it's a good card.
It's maybe one of the best cards in the deck, honestly.
It genuinely is.
So good.
Genuinely is. I slept on this card when Fang came out. I was wrong. Very good 0 for 4 react that messes with your opponent's blocks. even if you're like under red in the ledger, this card is good because you just play it and then attack with your first attack, and it pumps that. It's the only bad time to draw this card is in triplicates and when you need to block with most of your hand and you drew a bunch of zero blocks. But the best zero block in the deck is Tooth of the Dragon, so yeah. Okay, I said I'd come back around. I want to touch on the attacks first. Why am I playing 2 copies of Oath of Loyalty and 2 copies of For the Drakai and no other attacks in the 80? There's 2 reasons. First of all, only playing 4 attacks lets the ratios in this deck board all of them out against decks where attacks are really suspect. Those are most notably Bolton, Kasai, and Codex decks, with the exception of Huntsman, because just throw everything in against a Huntsman. So that is the reason why there's not like a random 5th or 6th attack, because there are other good attacks you can play in this, like Blaze Headlong, and what's it called? Hunt to the Ends of Wraith. Yeah, Blaze Headlong, Hunts to the Ends of Wraith are both good cards. I don't love them because they block 2. They don't like they don't support the game plan that I want to go for. But if you were playing those cards, they're not bad cards. You just need to build a deck with them in mind.
Yeah, there's like a certain amount of like just choose your own 0 for 4s that goes into Fang deck building where he has like access to what, like 20 plus 0 for 4s, like maybe.
I mean, if you really wanted to play all of the 0 for 4s, you could probably play 50.
Yeah, like there's just like a million different ways to do it, and it's like if you want to play those, that's fine. But like I think that they have a very different sort of game plan, a very different sort of spread than what we were going for.
Yeah. And then why these attacks in these ratios, aside from just only wanting 4 total attacks in the deck? Oath of Loyalty is an incredibly powerful card, except when it's not.
It also has like this really bad cantrip issue.
Yeah.
Where this deck is blind drawing a decent amount. Like we have 3 Saver, we have Perforate, we have all these like random draws, Balance of Justice even. And if you blind draw into Oath, it feels really bad, especially if you have another card you were like planning on arsenaling. It like changes how your whole turn has to go now. It makes you have to do like really awkward things with like D-reacts if you know it's possible that you can cantrip into Oath.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't really want to have too many of them, and I think we've played anywhere from like 0 to 3 at this point.
Yep.
And like the upside's just like too good to pass up, but like the downsides are definitely there.
The biggest upside: block 3, Draconic.
Yo, that's wild.
It really is. But now, Oath of Loyalty is insane on some hands. Sometimes you just get to send an Oath with a Vigor up, then you send a Dagger with an Affirm Loyalty, you get online, then you send your 3rd Dagger with like a Long Whisker Loyalty with all 3 modes, then you send another Dagger with another pump, and your turn's just like, oh cool, I just did 4 card 16, generated 3 fealty. And sometimes you draw Oath of Loyalty, Savor Bloodshed, Scar Tissue, and a D-React, and you're just sitting there like, alright, this isn't good. This is a bad hand.
Yeah.
And yeah, I never want to see 2 Oaths. Obviously, they block 3, so like, it's not the end of the world if you draw 2 Oaths in the same hand. You can normally block with 1, but Fang does want wide hands even more with Oath turns, so and then for the Drakai, I wanted a 3 block card, I wanted a Draconic card, I wanted a card that could mark people or create fealty. This does all of those while allowing me to occasionally extend to a 3, 4, 5 wide turn. It it fills the space correctly without it doesn't break any rules. I'd rather this be a 3 block reaction, but those we don't have those that do good stuff. Certainly not that do the rest of this text. So good space filler, and can definitely generate you fealty early game when, especially into matchups that like to block you a lot. So
This thing also can sometimes do really messed up stuff with Tooth of the Dragon.
yeah,
Like if you go like dagger tooth on the second chain link, almost always, especially like late in the game, people will be blocking heavier on the second than the first, from my experience.
yeah,
Because they want to play around tooth, and this just like blows them out. You just go like tooth into 7, and like it's really disgusting.
yep. And most of the time they'll be marked in these scenarios too. So if you ever wanted more fealty, here you go. It's so annoying for like aggro decks to block this too, because you'll be sitting at 1 fealty with them marked, and they'll block 4 on your second attack, and be like, okay, I'll give it go again. Here's 4, make a fealty. If you let this hit, I'm online next turn. It's very difficult for people to deal with. Good card. Why am I not playing 3? Drawing 2 sucks, and like I said, only really want 4 attacks. But drawing both of these together, good. So
Yeah.
weird
And I guess
ratioing
we can also mention like they're also fine 1 card hands is the other thing.
Yeah.
Like Fang does want some amount of just I can block with 3 cards, send 4, and like vibe. And both of these are also fine at doing that. So it's like Blaze Headlong, I guess, but I think these are like
these block 3.
It's the same thing in that. Yeah, these block 3, right?
Yeah. Before you're online, if your opponent has like a pop-off turn that puts you down to 1 card, it's really important to just have a Draconic thing to do, so that you don't lose the 1 or 2 fealty you're sitting on. Okay. Savor Bloodshed is what do you want to say? Like, it's a cracked card. It blocks 3. It's a 0 for 4. Most of the time, maybe probably less than Mario, but like a comparable amount of time, this is a block 3 0 for 4 on hit draw card.
Yeah, it's like literally just snatch with go again, like 90%, and it blocks 3.
Yeah.
Like it's just really good.
It's a really, really, really good card. Don't be afraid to play it if you can't draw a card. It is still a 0 for 4, but obviously there's going to be times when you look at your hand, you're like, okay, I can arsenal this and set up a draw next turn or something like that. But don't sit on this card the whole game waiting for a draw. Just send it as a 0 for 4. It's okay. Okay, I'm going to talk about these, and then we're going to... Well, let's talk about Sworn Vengeance quickly. It's a 0 mana plus 3 block. Weapon gets on hit mark them. It's just another way to generate fealty. It blocks 3 after you're online. That's... Well, what more can you ask for? That it's Draconic, but we can't get that, so this is fine.
Yeah, there's just like you need a certain density of cards that mark and make fealty in Fang, and this is just like one of the better ones. Like Scar Tissue, obviously, like same vibe, I guess, if we want to talk about that. It's like the same thing but a reaction, right? This one blocks 3, the other one's a react. So
yeah, having your fealty generation block 3 is or be relevant once you're online is huge, and there's not a lot of that effect. So yeah. That's what Sworn Vengeance does. Drop of Dragon Blood. This card is... You read it once, you're like, that's cracked. You read it twice and then think about how Fang works, you're like, wow, this card sucks. And then you sit down and really think about how Fang works, and you're like, okay, it's good. And that's pretty much the process that we went through on it. There was a time when this was not in any Fang decks, because people were like, oh, but like you pitch a red and then you attack, and then this is your Draconic react, that sucks. But then, because we all were collectively stupid for 2 months, 3 months, however long it was, we were like, wait, you just pitched the red, you were going to pitch to the second dagger to use this, and then it draws you a card and gives you the resource back. So, yeah, it just draws you a card while giving a dagger go again. Means you can block with an extra card and then still get second Chain Link Affirm Loyalty or Searing Gaze or Long Whisker occasionally.
It's
And
also like a decent way to start generating vigor without drawing a
yes,
blue, which comes up a lot, especially when we get to like the one cost in our pitch base that
yeah.
is very good that we want to be able to play.
And yeah, and late game it allows you to generate a resource, what Zach said. And also draw a card, which
Yeah.
can be very good and is one of the reasons that we're cutting back on stuff like Oath. Fire and Brimstone is the most powerful card in your deck. It's probably not the best card in your deck, but it is a 0 for 7 if you can set it up fully. And it is one of the reasons that I prefer this style of deck list over Mara's attack heavy deck list, because it is a lot easier to set up Fire and Brimstone and Twist and Turn, which we'll touch on later, when you have an overabundance of reacts as opposed to attacks. Generally speaking, you'll play your first dagger, you'll pump it with something, you'll play your second dagger, your opponent will block 3 to 6 on it, you'll play this, and then you'll attack with each dagger for 2 again, and ideally you will have 2 more reacts left on a 4 to 5 card hand, and pump the next one to 5 to 7, pump the next one to 5 to 7. This card will have generated +1 from being Draconic, +1 from each dagger, so that's 4, and then +1 from each react that you can play on those new daggers, which pumps it to 6, and then if you could play this on the first chain link, it's 7. So yeah, it's a really good card. It blocks 3. What more can I ask for? It's a block 3 Draconic card that's nutty late game and whatever early game.
All right, I will say sometimes you can play this early game, which does get into, I guess, if you're ready to talk about Perforate.
We'll touch on Perforate when we get there. First,
Yeah, but just be aware, if you draw this in Perforate early game, you can do a full Brimstone line without like having
online.
fealty.
Yeah.
Which is like the most disgusting thing you can do to people. I've killed people on turn 2 playing Perforate Fire and Brimstone with 1 fealty before. It's like just gross.
Yeah,
they just look at you like you grew a second head. Like
it's extra attacks plus effects like this are insane. Scar Tissue Red is a great card. +3, mark them. Block 2 isn't Draconic, but once you're online, it's a 0 for 4 because you just break the fealty. You get the Draconic pump and the go again. So early game, it's a mark generator. Late game, it's a 0 for 4 go again. No complaints. Good card. I hate this card in yellow so much. It's a 2 block. It only pumps to 3, which means you don't get around D reacts. You'll pump the dagger up to 4, and without fail, your opponent will have the D react. But we need mark generation. And we need reacts, and we need non-red cards. So it's here for now. Maybe if Fang gets like one more good Draconic card, or if Fang gets like another playable react in yellow that's a 3 block or another way to mark or something like that, we could see this go. But for now, it's a necessary evil. It's not the worst. It's so subpar compared to everything else you're doing in this deck.
Yeah, I don't know. I have like such a love-hate relationship with this card. It's been in and out of my list for like the entire existence of Fang. And it's like, just the other things you try in the slot just aren't better, is fundamentally the issue. It's like, we tried like Yellow Incision even, just to have like something that was like the same value, didn't mark and block 3, and it's just like, no, that's not good enough.
No.
There's not other things that mark, so it's like your only real option there, unless you're playing like more exposed, I guess, also marks, which we did for a little bit, but like, I don't know. It's like weirdly just the least bad of the bad options, kind of is where I land with it.
Yeah, and they go fealty neutral, which is important. So, like, even if you needed to break a fealty to play it with go again early game, you get that fealty back, assuming that you hit twice, and hitting twice in Fang into all but the most defensive decks is not difficult. So that's relevant, and it'll come up again for exposed. All right, and let's touch on the one of Slap Happy. This
We
is
have to play
not
Perforate.
this is not the one that makes agility. We are actually playing a 0 for 2 Make a Vigor. Zach mentioned one of the big reasons for it, which is you want a way, once you're online, to generate a Vigor so that you can play Perforate without having to actually pitch a card, if you weren't already floating it. So Slap Happy and Drop of Dragon Blood fill that role in the deck. I like having two versions of this effect just to play 3 Perforates once you're online. You can mess around a little bit in your own version for that. It helps into arcane damage and unpreventable damage from like Syndra, Runeblade, Wizard, whatever. So that is a small benefit to this. But there's also the fact that Make a Vigor in this deck actually amounts to draw a card so much more than you think.
Yeah, like if you think about drawing an all red hand early game, you're literally pitching 2 cards to swing dagger twice, unless you have like some other like 1 card hand to do. Like a lot of time that's what the play pattern is. And Slap Happy just reads I get to block 2 and also pitch this red card.
This card to me is a arsenalable card that pitches like it's a yellow. And to me, this card is just like block 2 draw card most of the time. And that all right, that sounds insane. Why aren't I playing 3? Well, it's also not really an attack react. You can break fealty on this to give your dagger go again and +1 and just play it during your turn. And you do that in this deck because that is another upside of this card. But it's Fang just needs such a density of proactive tools that you can't over-index on defensive cards. I've liked 1. Drawing 2 of these is really bad, so like way worse than almost any other card in the deck. It's a good card. It blocks 2 while generating you value for your next turn. It enables cracked Perforate lines. You can arsenal it and still be happy because you can just play it in response to a Plow Under or a CNC.
Would you say you can be Slap Happy?
I can be pretty Slap Happy. It's a weird card, but it gets the job done. If there were better Draconic cards to put in the deck, yeah, you would probably put them in over something like Slap Happy, but there's not. There's genuinely, unless you wanted to add attacks in, there's not, and I'd personally rather top deck this than an attack most of the time when I'm drawing off of a Perforate. So, yeah, that's that. And then into the pitch base. The pitch base in the deck is functionally 15.5. I count Slap Happy as half a pitch card, and then you're boarding in a Snag or a Warmongers in nearly every matchup. I think the biggest problem with a lot of the Fang decks that I have seen is that they do not have pitch cards that enable them to be strong. Mara's list circumvents needing pitch by playing attacks and only planning to send dagger once a turn. Makes sense until we start considering like how do we play into Jarl, how do we play into Vinset, how do we play into Verdance where you'll almost never get to have 3 fealty for more than 1 or 2 turns. Because of matchups like those, I have decided that, hey, I want to play pitch cards. And one of the big things driving me to play pitch cards is that these pitch cards are really good. Like, they're just good cards. Starting with, like, the weakest, I guess, which is Glint. It's a blue. It blocks 3. It gives go again without being Draconic, and it draws a card. And that's bad in this deck because I don't know, honestly. Most of the time you draw this card and you're like, oh, it's a block 3 or it's a blue pitch.
Yeah, I don't know.
Eh,
People have this like weird hang up with Glint where they're like, it's not on, I'm not drawing cards enough. Well, okay, then just don't arsenal it into matchups where they don't block you. And
Yeah,
just block with it. Right? Like
exactly.
it like I don't get what the hang up is with a lot of Fang players on block 3 being a bad floor. But like we've talked about it a lot in this deck already, where it's like block 3 as a floor is good, right? Like
Yeah.
can we not agree that block 3 as a floor is good? I don't get it.
I think if you're playing a matchup where they're not blocking you and you can trip into this, for example, uh, it is like those matchups are so functionally short, like normally 4 or 5 turns, sometimes 3, that say you can trip into this on turn 2. All right, I'm going to have it in Arsenal until turn 4 when they have to block me or die, or I'm already dead. It doesn't matter at that point. Like, the drawing into a different react very, very rarely would have netted you the win there, and drawing this not off of a cantrip and having it let you play your whole turn out while generating a vigor into those matchups is just nutty. So, yeah, this card's great. I'm gonna save this one for last because it's the weirdest.
It's definitely the one that I think the least people are on.
Twist and Turn is just yellow fire and brimstone. Um, it blocks 3. It's yellow, so it allows you to attack with both daggers. Um, sometimes it lets you generate a vigor while attacking with a dagger. It's a 0 for 3, but on hit +2. So it's a 0 for 5, effectively. Why +2 on hit? Same thing as we talked about before with Fire and Brimstone. You generate the +1 damage off the dagger, and then you generate the +1 damage off of being able to do the once per chain link pump on the dagger. And that's not even to mention synergies with going wide, like Fire and Brimstone, like Rake Over the Coals, like getting all 3 triggers on Long Whisker Loyalty, like being able to dodge out on react, like on overblocks, stuff like that. And then Perforate. Blocks 3, only card in the list that costs mana except for the Paupers. This card is so it does everything. If you can have the vigor for it, it will do everything your deck wants. First of all, if you're not online and you have a second color strip that's not red in your hand, yellow or blue, you pitch the card, you attack with the dagger, and then you use the floating to play Perforate on your other dagger. That dagger's now free for the rest of the turn, so you've generated an extra attack, drawn a card while pitching. If you have 3 Draconic reacts, that's insane. Almost always nets you a ton of damage. If you don't, hey, you can pop Fealty on this card. Even when you're on 3 Fealty, you can pop Fealty on this card, and your daggers are still free, and chances are you'll have a way to make another Fealty in hand. Late game, you just play this, pop a Fealty on it, and it just circumvents your opponent's block that turn, draws you a card, gives you an extra attack. It blocks 3. If it's the only colored source in your hand that's not red, it pitches. This card's nutty. It's one of the reasons, admittedly, that we need to build the deck in a way so that cantripping is good. But we've seen with Gravy and Kano and decks like that how good it is to just draw through your whole deck. Perforates, Savor Blood, Shed, Drop of Dragon Blood, Glint. All of these cards just power you through the deck as well. Not as fast as something like Gravy, but still way faster than you'd think, and it lets you it just lets you be a little more consistent in the medium length games.
Yeah, and I think that like the only thing I'd say on Perforate, and it's like you already mentioned it, but just to like stress this to people, Perforate is good on any amount of fealty.
Yeah,
Like you draw it on one fealty, and you're like, okay, whatever, I can use a fealty on this and still go like 3 wide, and my daggers are free. You draw it on 5 fealty, and you're like, okay, I'm not even going offline, and I get to go 3 wide, and my daggers are free. It's like it doesn't really have a downside as long as you can pay for it.
yeah. And if you can't pay for it, it's a yellow block 3. Yellow
Yeah.
being the pitch strip of choice in this deck. So what is there to complain about? All right, and then exposed. This is probably
The darkest of technology that we have
the
found.
darkest of technology. Why am I playing exposed? I wanted a reaction card for cantripping reasons. I wanted another way to mark my opponent for consistency reasons. I wanted a way to generate mark at reaction or instant speed to enable surprise saver bloodshed draws. And I wanted a pitch card for consistency reasons and for Vincent reasons. This card does everything there. It's fealty neutral. It's a 0 mana +2 when you break a fealty to play it. It enables the Saver Bloodshed lines. It guarantees a mark so that into super defensive decks you can play this and then get like a For the Drakai off to generate guaranteed fealty. But it it's missing something.
Yeah, there's a little number that isn't quite there. Yeah.
It doesn't block. And that sucks. Do not get me wrong. There are 2 issues with this card. One is that it does not block, and 2 is that you cannot play it into Mario or Slippy. Mostly Mario, though, because you can't play it while you're marked. So that necessitates some weird sideboarding choices, and it necessitates just... You gotta fly by the seat of your pants a little bit. But don't draw 2 of them in the same hand.
Hey, it worked out for you.
This
right?
and Slap Happy. This and Slap Happy, the first or the second copy of this and Slap Happy are the first 2 cards I would cut from this list. But you have to be able to find a card that is blue reaction speed, generates value, and plays around a bunch of different things in a bunch of different ways. And these are just the cards that exist that do that. They both have very clear downsides, but you have to take on those downsides for this card, for something like Fang.
And and as an extension, like just if you're gonna play Fang, you need to accept that there's a certain amount of your deck is like barely held together. You know, the card pool just isn't there for the deck to be like as good as it like has the potential to be. At least not yet. And then this card just like the guaranteed mark is so huge, especially into like some of the fatiguey decks too, where it's just like a lot of times you just can't hit reliably. And along with pledge fealty, this gives you a guaranteed way to make fealty. It also has like some cute applications where you can like use it on an attack. Like I've killed people just like pumping Oath to 6 before, and like they just die with their 3. Like people just don't expect it.
Yeah, you can cast it on attacks for weird lethals for sure. And then some people might say, what is it tip off? Is tip off the instance?
Yeah, the attack that you can discard.
Yeah, so why not play tip off, which is a 2 block 1 cost attack for 3 that has instant speed, discard this to mark your opponent. Because it sounds like it does a lot of the same things, but it blocks 2. Well, the answer is really simple. You can't break a fealty and give go again, and
it
+2.
Doesn't say the reaction word. Yeah, the reaction word kind of matters, you know?
Yeah, since you can't break fealty and use it to give go again +1, it doesn't enable twist and turn lines. It doesn't enable fire and brimstone lines. It doesn't enable second chain link effects.
I think the biggest one actually is like its interaction with Saber. Because, exposed with Saver, making it from 5 to 7 is just such a disgusting thing that people just never play around.
Yeah,
Because usually, like, if people are playing around an instant speed mark on Saver, they'll block 6 because they're gonna play around Proclaim Vengeance, which is like the same effect but red and Draconic at base. Um, and this, like, to me is just better Proclaim Vengeance. It's like if you want an instant speed mark effect, like, why not make it pitch instead
yeah,
of just saying Draconic? You know?
exactly. If you have Proclaim Vengeance in your deck, ask yourself why it's not exposed. That's my approach. And you might say, hey, this one doesn't give go again unless you pop a fealty. That's fine. I get it.
You might say I can play one of them into Arachne and it's good.
Yeah.
Like, and fair enough. But like,
Yeah.
into basically anything else, I think this is just better Proclaim Vengeance.
Yeah, and I agree. All right, I'm gonna move on to the sideboard quickly. I mentioned the Spell Fray before. Spell Fray versus Paupers. It's just a meta call for me. Um, I expected more Prism at Nats than Kano. I was right. I didn't run into either though, so I dropped to Spell Fray for Paupers. You don't need Paupers to beat Prism, but you do need to play really, really tight. Game plan mostly focuses around using equipment plus 1 card to block the first Herald each turn, and giving them a free second Herald, and then trying to get online by turn 2-3, and just killing them. The biggest, like, aside from like knowing that play pattern, you have to know to keep an instant or non-attack action in arsenal or hand to play around ALS. If you get ALS'd and you have all reactions in hand, you lose all your fealty because you can't react during the ALS pop. So if you can do those two things, your Prism opponent doesn't draw incredibly well, you don't draw incredibly badly, you can generally win the matchup. Without Paupers, you add Paupers in, it matchup just gets pretty free if you draw them early. And yeah, and that's just generally how that goes.
Yeah, and I guess just to like talk about why there's 2 random ones. Like I had somebody ask me yesterday why we're on Raging Onslaught. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. It just makes the Prism play around having more, right? When you just have different names.
I only had one Battlefront Bastion in my. Yeah.
No, that's so based. Actually.
Yeah, no, I had 3 Raging Onslaughts in my spare card pile, and I only had 1 Bastion. That's the actual answer.
Nice. No, that's so based. Actually.
Yeah, good job trying to cope it.
Yeah, no, trying to justify your shenanigans. No, Battlefront's obviously the best one, right? Because it floats the prevention for the second Herald.
Bastion is objectively the best one. Play 2 Bastions or 3
sure.
Bastions or 1 Bastion, but
don't cope yourself. Don't cope yourself into Findles. I see some people try to do that. The Prism starts at 32. Don't play Findles.
Also, she doesn't start at 32. Like, the matchup is normally like 20-1.
Yes,
like you're never healing
exactly,
off of Findles. Take the floating prevention. You're like, if it doesn't need to be popped, you're winning the game, and if it does need to be popped, you gained a life. Good job. Okay. Big weird card. Why is this in the sideboard? This is like the best card in Fang, isn't it?
Some games are just too fast,
Some decks are just too fast, and it's a little bit like, I do occasionally take cards from the main board out in matchups, so having a card in the sideboard versus the main board, what does it actually mean? Not a whole lot. There's normally 1 Hunsend in almost every matchup. So, how many Hunsend you play, though, that's different. So, a lot of matchups are very, very fast, as Zach said. And you really cannot afford to draw dead cards like Hunsend before you're online. And the matchups do not come down to whether or not you can do 1 to 2 extra points of damage because of Hunsend. They normally come down to, did the Fang stumble? Did the opponent high roll? And then if neither of those things happened, Fang is normally marginally favored into fast matchups. This means Acilio, Syndra, but Syndra's a little weird because different builds of Syndra are vastly different percentages for you. Um, Kano in a different way. Dio and any other boost mech and stuff like that. For example, into Syndra, I bring one Hunt's End in over one Imperial Intent because I want to have a block 3 in that slot to make that matchup marginally easier, and then if I draw the Hunt's End late game, it's a 0 for 5. That's great.
Yeah, there's also like a certain level of you want people to play around Hunt's End. So like
Yeah.
just having one in and even blocking with it, it's like they can look in your graveyard and be like, man, there's 2 Hunts left, and then you just don't even have them in deck. Like,
Yeah. Like that is an acceptable risk threshold for me. Having one in the super aggro matchups. I think the only matchup where I play 0 Hunt's End are like Acilio and Kano. By the way, this has every matchup in the game with sideboard plans. I think they're all correct. If there's something wrong with them, it might be that like I forgot to swap in the hat, either AB or balance. But otherwise, all of the cards index should be correct. Yeah, Hunt's End, you bring in 3 into your slow matchups, obviously. Into mid-range matchups, you bring in 3, sometimes 2, but almost always 3. And into aggro matchups, it's normally 1. Yeah, it's just a great card. I don't know. It clunks you up early, but 0 for 4. 1 card 8. If you only have 1 card in hand, just dagger, send it for 6, then next dagger, then reset Dynamo.
yeah, here's 0 for 8 is pretty good.
Yeah, 1 card 8 is pretty good. Rake over the coals. Another sort of weird, mildly spicy card. We have a lot of ways in this deck to generate extra dagger attacks. And we really want a starter into fatigue matchups. So a starter in this case just means something that gives go again to your dagger, your first dagger, which allows you to second chain link play Affirm Loyalty, Searing Gaze, Long Whisker Loyalty, and sometimes Blistering Blade. This fills both of those roles. It blocks 0, but generally you're only bringing it into matchups where you don't really care about blocking. The mild exception to that is because of the weirdness with exposed and attack actions into Arachne, both Slippy and Mario. You bring 2 of these in just because you don't have anything else to bring in, and it's better than giving them Codex targets or a card that 80% of the time is unplayable. So, yeah. Otherwise, it's a starter. It's a 0 for 3 at minimum. Sometimes it's a 0 for 4, 0 for 5, 0 for 6. It works on your attack actions, so you can even get weird pumps there. It fills the role right. It lets you either pitch stack or set up colossal Fire and Brimstone turns late game too into slow decks, and it serves as a hedge into running into like a slab dash without the correct equipment for it.
Yeah, and like fundamentally, there's just really not a lot better for the slot that we're trying to occupy anyway.
Yeah.
Like I know people get really like hung up on like the no blocks, and like how many we're on. I think is probably gonna be like a point of contention. But like, what are you really considering in that slot over Rake over the coals? At that point, it's what like
It has to be other attack actions.
Scalding Iron or something like that, right?
Yeah, it has to be either an attack action starter like Blaze or Oath, because
like,
I need it to be a chain starter.
Yeah, and then the issue with Blaze is that's not actually a starter because you need another red to give it go again. So it's like that doesn't really fit the same niche. If you're playing Hunt to the Ends of Wraith, well then it's inconsistently a 0 for 2 or a 0 for 4, which is like the same rate as you're getting off of Rake on average anyway. Except for Rake is an attack react and has like the upside of potentially going higher.
And these
a lot of the
block
time.
2 anyways, so yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the difference between 2 and 0 is not that high. Like you just don't really have better options for what we're going for, I don't think.
Pretty much. And yeah, like the upside on this card is insane. Have I lost games that I should have won because I have drawn 3 to 4 0 blocks? Absolutely. Many times. But you gotta take it, right? You gotta take the beats.
Yep.
Maybe it means you should have blocked more aggressively early to play around the possibility. Like you have to track roughly how many 0 blocks are left in your deck and how much of your deck you've seen, so that you know, like, hey, there's X chance that I'm gonna draw this many 0 blocks in the next hand, and I'm at 7 life against this deck. Does that mean that I'm going to die? Should I block with an extra card here even though it's inefficient? Stuff like that. But generally you can play around it and the upside is worth it. I'll touch on the D-React and the ratios in a bit. Arcane compliance, 2 reasons. First of all, I don't want to lose to Kano. Second of all, it's good into Acilio. Now, people are going to say, oh, they just play a shock and you can't compliance a shock. That's not why it's good into Acilio. It's good into Acilio because it's a blue.
Yeah, and I mean, even like on the shock thing, he only has what, like 9 shocks, something like that. Like
6 to 9, depending on what
yeah.
they're doing.
So like the chance that it's actually a shock isn't that high. You know, it's on like about half the time, I'd say. You know, and when it's on, it's great, and when it's not on, like I said, it's just a blue, right? It just pays for your turn.
Yeah. So Acilio is a matchup where you are trying to kill them by turn 3 or 4. You are just like slamming, no AB, slamming your equipment in front of their cards, only ever blocking with a card from hand when it's going to get no value, or it's a D-React, right? Arcane Compliance just adds more pitch sources to the deck instead of like dirtily slower cards, and allows you to just almost every turn of the game, you'll have a colored strip in your hand. And it allows you to be more aggressive. If you draw multiple color strips with this, then great, goes into your arsenal, and next time they try to mind warp you, you get to say no. And even if they respond to your arcane compliance on mind warp with shock you for 10, you didn't get mind warped. That's really, you traded a card for a card at that point, because the mind warp would make you effectively discard a card. That's fine. Yeah, it just serves as insulation against that. Yes, sometimes you're going to get mind warped into 2 arcane compliances and you're going to hate your life, but it happens.
But hey, it's an attack react, kind of, sort of.
No, it's not, because you have to play it in response to an action card.
Well, no, I mean, like, you can you not?
No, you have to respond to an action card with it.
Oh, yeah, I thought it worked like Snag, but I guess it doesn't work like Snag.
Nope. Speaking of Snag, though, like
Snag is good.
Arcane Compliance, Acilio, and Kano tech. If you don't expect to see either of those or don't care about those matchups, you can cut it for anything. Yeah, Snag's a great card, and people are gonna sit here and say, "Oh, but first of all, block 0. You have a lot of block 0s. Why do you want another block 0?"
It blocks for 4.
Like it blocks for 4
into
a lot of
Earth
the time.
at least. Yeah, like in the matchups we're playing it into, you know.
Yeah, so Snag sort of cracked even into Mario. So Mario does not pump attacks very often. It's true. Like they're only pumping the blues with Justinic, or they're pumping like a Kiss of Death for a gazillion. Snag is a blue. It just lets you play your turn early. You draw it late. It does one of 2 things. Either you break a fealty to give a dagger go again. That's fine, by the way. Like, that's good. Like, it doesn't sound good, but most of the time when you're doing that, that's because you're dodging 3 to 6 block by doing so. And then killing your opponent most of the time. Or it just sits around in Arsenal, waiting for your opponent to do something relevant. And most of the time you're not losing to Mario if they're not hitting like a big Bonds of Agony or like a really annoying to deal with Kiss of Death. And just having this block 3 to 20 on those turns is good. Um, Outside of Assassin, I board this into Earth Heroes. I think I'm currently boarding it into Vinset. Don't quote me on that. Um, and you board it. I believe you board it. Well, Jarl is an Earth Hero, but you board it into Earth Heroes. You board it into Assassins. You board it into Katsu, and you board it into like Vinset, I believe. And that's just, and I think Kano as well, just because it's a blue.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it just lets you have an extra blue in the matchups where it's relevant, or into Earth Heroes, you just snag the Plow Under or you snag the Felling. It blocks 4 in those matchups, but it blocks 4 way better than D-React because it's a blue, it's functionally an attack react, and it also, you can Arsenal it, which you can't Arsenal D-Reacts into Plow Under, which is, they Plow Under you, they pay their thing, they put the trigger on the stack, you snag, block with Dynamos, take 1 on their 2-card turn. It's, oh, it feels so good. It really does feel fantastic when you get that. Same thing with Slap Happy over other D-Reacts. Being able to Arsenal it against Plow Under is so nice. Okay, and then Warmongers, and then D-Reacts, and we're done. Warmongers, I don't think I have to explain how powerful this card is. I don't think I should have to explain too much how powerful it is in a deck with unlimited go again, like Draconic, like Ninja. And this is just one of those decks. It has some issues. Most notably, it is not good to cantrip into sometimes. And you end up playing it in matchups where Warmongers is not good just because you want a blue that blocks 3 rather than a snag. So in those matchups in particular, drawing into a Warmongers, really bad. But there's a lot of matchups where Warmongers is good into them. A lot of matchups you just want a blue block 3, and it fills that role nicely. I wanted a little bit more tech into Azalea and Vinset, and it does nicely into a couple other matchups. Obviously, it's good into Gravy, but you don't normally need it there. Stuff like that. It's a good card. Could you play more? Yes, but I would not bring more than one into matchups where it's not always good to play. Because if you can trip into this card, you do not want to Arsenal it normally.
Yeah, it also like sucks to draw 2 a lot of the time. Like unless you're not online, then you can pitch 1 and keep 1, I guess. But like drawing 2 when you're online is just like hard to get rid of.
But yeah, if you expect a lot of decks that are really weak to Warmongers that you don't already beat fairly easily, like Gravy, hey, you got plenty of things you can cut depending on your meta. And then D-Reacts. Sync Blow, I think, is just the best D-React in Fang because it fixes your hand. Not much to say about that there. Like,
so good, I was running 6 of them at one point.
Yeah, like so... you can draw awful hands in Fang, and Sync Blow really helps fix that. It helps you draw to a colored source before you're online, get rid of pledge fealties, or exposed when you're online, stuff like that. So, if you're playing any D-Reacts, I would almost always start with Sync. And then Shelter. The reason I'm playing Shelter is more complicated than because it is the second best D-React. The main reason I am playing Shelter over any other D-React in this slot is Vinset. I just want another card that blocks 3 Rune Chants in that matchup, and I can't play more blues in this slot because I need them to go into like Syndra and Azalea and stuff like that. So yeah, I just consider this a blue into Rune Chant decks, and I'm happy with it at that. You don't bring it into Florian, so really only Vinset, but if Viserai was still around, same thing. Yeah, and that's why I'm playing these specific D-Reacts. Why only 5? The same thing as I've been saying for a lot of these cards. You don't want to draw multiples. You don't want to cantrip into them. 5 feels like the right ratio for me, where I'm okay with this many. If you only cantrip into 1, then you can arsenal it. I recommend using D-Reacts aggressively, just because you can draw into extras, and they can be bad a lot of the time. But Sync mitigates that a little bit anyways.
Yep. No, I think I've played everywhere from like 5 to 15 D reacts in Fang, and it's like slowly over time you just start cutting more and more because, like you said, like they just clump too much, and when you're clumping on Fang, you have like several ways your deck can clump and screw you. You don't want to introduce more of them, right? Like you can
Yeah.
already clump on non-draconic. You don't want your non-draconics to also do nothing. Like if you have full tempo, like that's like the biggest issue with D-Reacts, I think. Is like you can get into these game states as Fang where you have full tempo, you're just like swinging, stripping a bunch of cards from their hand, and then you draw up like 3 D-Reacts and you just like lose the game on the spot, and it's really sad.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just gotta limit, be like a little bit more reserved in your value. You know, not every card needs to be a 0 for 4 offensively and defensively. I guess is my main thing I want people to get away from this, because I think a lot of people tunnel on like 3 is not good enough in Fang, but it definitely is, at least
Yeah.
in my opinion.
And I mentioned, just before we move on from the Dex Tech stuff, I wanted to mention the Null Rune Hood again now that I'm talking about Vinset a lot more. Null Rune Hood is primarily for Verdance and Vinset, and like I mentioned before, maybe Florian, depends, and obviously Kano. Um, I played into Verdance with the knowing full well that there is a good chance I will never pay to AB outside of them going first, like them having turn 0, or Storm Striders. I am okay with that. Uh, this hat represents 2 block on a Storm Strider's turn, assuming you still have resources, which is equivalent to any other hat, and none of these hats are getting any value into Verdance. So it's already equivalent there. And then sometimes your opponent is going to play like a Heartbeat of Candlehold while they're online, and you just get to pitch an Exposed or a Glint to block it, and or a Warmongers or a Snag or whatever, right? And you're happy. So that's why I run it there. A lot of people don't run any AB in that matchup. I just see it as functionally equivalent with occasional upside. And Vinset, even though you're only running 7 blues, it makes the Vinset have to think, and generally it forces them to pay life when they like really cannot afford to have you block all of their rune chants. They'll have to pay life, and just having Null Rune Hood, sacrificing 2 block to block 3 rune chants once a game, not be dead on board when you're at like 3. I like it a lot in that matchup. You could play Spell Void into Kano in the slot instead, but I again think Null Rune Hood is just better by a small margin, so long as you're playing around it right. And yeah, and that's the deck. Lots of weird choices, lots of really specific ratios. If you want to see the matchups, they're pretty much all here, like I said. You want to go first into every single deck. The only matchup where that might be a maybe is Redline Syndra, but it's more of a, if you went second into Redline Syndra, you're not terribly disappointed. But into every other deck in the game, you want to go first 100% of the time, and then you want to attack on turn 0 99% of the time to either attempt to generate on hits to make a vigor off of like pitching a yellow, or to generate marks, or to just dig towards cards that generate vigor, marks, and fealty. Anything you want to add on the deck, Zach?
No, I think we're good on like the deck itself, how it plays for the most part. We'll get into that more, I'm sure, on like the VOD review. I mean, are there any like maybe cards that we considered that we haven't talked about that are like maybe worth mentioning? I guess like on the stream game, people talked about Provoke.
Don't
I
play
don't.
Provoke.
Yeah, don't play Provoke. The issue with Provoke is a cost one. I guess is the biggest issue.
It's one of the biggest issues. Yeah.
Yeah, among other things, but like it's just like it's not efficient. It costs one. It like makes all of your like good perforate lines worse by existing because like you have to juggle resource for more different payoffs. It's not really worth it. Even like when you resolve it in the like the ideal sense, is it even like good? Not really most of the time.
Yeah. If Perforate didn't exist, I would play 3 Provoke in its slot, but Perforate does exist, therefore, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Provoke is cute, but like Perforate's already taxing. You're floating bigger, and yeah. Provoke does do a lot of the stuff you want to do. It's just the problem is it costs one.
Yeah. Let's see. And anything else that we tried that's like funny that we could talk about?
Not off the top of my head. I will say there's a million and one ways to build Fang, but they all like you have to find a very coherent way to play it.
Yeah, Fang's not really a deck you want to like fly by the seat of your pants on. You want to like have your game plans like ready and understand what you're building towards. And I guess the only other card that comes to mind that we haven't talked about that I know people like and talk about a lot is Loyalty Beyond the Grave, I guess. Like, do we want to talk about that one, the D-React?
Yeah, I don't have... let me see if I can pull up Loyalty quickly.
Because, like, I don't know. This card does, like, a lot of things you might want, where it, like, helps you go wider, and it, like, is a D-React, which is nice.
This card is bad.
Yeah, the issue is that, like, you probably have to play, like, 3 to reliably draw it, for one thing. And then even, like, which makes the third one dead, obviously. But even when you reliably draw it, it, like, doesn't generally help the matchups you need it to help in, because you really want like the wide hands into decks like Stack Florian, like all these like super blocky decks, but they don't attack you, so you can't actually get them into the graveyard. Well, and into the super fast decks, you like don't see them fast enough, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so like that's the important thing. In too fast decks, you will not normally see enough copies of this for it to be relevant, and in too slow decks, most slow decks in the current meta are Earth. I do not want to be playing D-Reacts into Plow Under. It's just bad. So I could play 2 copies of this into Earth, but then I can't Arsenal it. And if you're telling me it's like, okay, that means I have to block with this on like Florian's Sword, and then not use Dynamos that turn because I had to block with this instead, I'm good. Right? Like, sometimes you can draw a card late game for it, but those matchups are already really, really favored for you, and you just need help in fast matchups, so this doesn't really do that. It's certainly not consistently. Yeah,
for sure.
There's a ton of other cards you can play in Fang.
Yeah, yeah, and if there's other cards people have questions on, we've tried everything from, like, Sisters of Fire to, like, Standing Order. You know, we've tried like everything.
You've tried Standing Order.
I've tried Standing Order. So you know, if people have questions about specific cards, they can ask in the comments. I think we covered like most of like the big ones that people like that we aren't on.
Yeah. Okay. Ridiculously long video aside, but hopefully you guys enjoy some yapping and hopefully some
we've done worse. We've definitely done worse on this channel. I think the Tekla one was like 2 hours, so you know we're still under that at least.